Welcome to the Northern Business Podcast. Each week we talk to people active in business and the economy about the big issues driving growth in the north of England. We're sponsored by Virtue Motors, one of the UK's leading motor retailers. You can check out its website at virtuemotors.com. I'm Graham Robb, owner of Recognition PR. We help scores of businesses to promote their products and services. Some are featured on this podcast. Make sure you don't miss an episode by subscribing on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. In the studio today, we have Aman Chahal, and Aman is the CEO at Tapered Plus. Down the line, we have Dave Broadbent, partner at Begbie's Trainer, and John Howe, founder of John Howe & Co. Solicitors. Well, welcome everyone. We'll be talking to you in the studio in a minute, Aman and John, but I want to kick off with Dave Broadbent. Dave, Begbie's Trainer is a specialist boutique insolvency practitioner, which might think if I'm talking to you, I'm in trouble, but you also help businesses, don't you? Tell us the kind of thing you're working on.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I mean, we're what you could probably class as the GP, the business GP. So, accountants, solicitors, sometimes we get stuff through the internet as well. People come to us for advice, really, in relation to the companies that are generally under financial pressure. And it's really for us to go through the options that are available to them. Hopefully we're able to save the business itself. It might not be in the current company that it's in. But unfortunately there are an increasing number of instances where the only viable option is to wind the business down, which is not always a great thing, but a general wind down is often what's required.
Now, we've seen a press release from you, and I'll read you the headline of the press release. A riding tide of financial distress is continuing to engulf businesses in Yorkshire and across the UK, despite forecasts that the country is set to emerge from recession. And I've got to say, I read this press release. I nearly went out and slashed my wrists and thought, well, why should I continue in business? It is a pretty, if I went to the GP and had a diagnosis like this, I think, well, my goodness, Dignitas is where I need to go. So is it really this bad, Dave?
If I say our numbers are massively up, I mean, if all people really need to do is to have a look at the government website, gov.uk have got some very good information there. And unfortunately, you can see the graphs that they produce, it drops down. The whole world of insolvency dropped off a cliff during COVID. But then in the following 3-4 years, it's had a steady, gradual incline. We are now experiencing the same number of formal insolvencies as was in the banking crisis in 2008. So that just gives you an indication of where we're at this moment in time.
And the data, I'll just pull through your press release just so people get a feel for the data on this. You were saying that in quarter one of this year, early stage or significant financial distress had risen by 36% in Yorkshire and affected 38,000 businesses. I mean, there are hundreds of thousands of businesses in Yorkshire, so 38,000 is a big number, but it's still a minority.
Yeah, significant. Yeah, we're certainly pulling out all the stops at the moment. I've been doing this job for 27 years, and I've not seen the level of so shall we say voluntary liquidations that we are doing at this moment in time. It's a huge amount. I think it's fair to say we are still experiencing what I call a COVID hangover. A lot of the businesses that we're seeing now are one of two things. Either they are dragging round the proverbial ball and chain, which is the debt that they accrued during the COVID pandemic through either one of the CBILS loans or the bounce back loans, or perhaps the tax that they were able to kick the can down the street with. Or secondly, I think a lot of businesses, and I'm sure the guys will be able to tell us a bit more, but a lot of businesses have had to completely change as to how they were pre-COVID to what they are now. And a lot of businesses have thrived as a result, but then certain ones have just struggled to actually be able to change and alter to the new surroundings that this new world has.
Now, I hope you don't mind me challenging you a bit. I believe everything you say because you're an expert in your field, and it's not for me to say you're wrong, but you obviously have a picture that emerges from the work you do and the data from the work you do. The work I do, which is as a PR firm, we promote things. And quite often we see things from the other end of the telescope. We see things that are coming up because we're about to promote them. For example, I'll give you a tangible example. A very well-known business in the north of England that has 68 locations throughout the UK is the Bannatyne Fitness Group. Now, it had severe problems because the fitness industry and the gym chains were closed even longer than every other sector during COVID, and it emerged with huge COVID loans. But Duncan Bannatyne, famous Dragon's Den, had a set of tactics which was about marginal gains. So it was everywhere in his business, whether it be the coffee shops, productivity, the leasing of equipment, the way in which rents were tackled. Everywhere in his business, he was looking for different types of income generation or revenue saving. And the result is that just a few weeks ago, he paid off the last of his CBILS loans, which amounted to tens of millions. And the business at the end of December 23 delivered I think it was £10 million profit. So that does prove that with careful attention to business and experience as well, businesses can turn around. It isn't all gloomy.
Yeah, no, completely agree with you. I mean, the sector that I specialise in is the owner-managed businesses. So these are the smaller end of the market. We do have a specific department that would deal with the size of businesses that Duncan has. I mean, my office is I cover the Teesside and the York region for the firm, and both regions are showing exactly the same sort of trends. The larger people seem to be doing fine. And as I mentioned earlier, some people have adapted incredibly well to what happened during the COVID pandemic. The element of where we are seeing a general increase is the smaller people. Yeah. Let's just say, for instance, take for instance a small limited company that has taken on borrowings of, say, £50,000, the maximum bounce back loan they could get, and perhaps we're still dragging around £20,000 or £30,000 worth of revenue and customs debts. That's a lot of money for a very small business to pay over a period of time. And even though the government did provide the Save As You Grow scheme, where effectively they allowed people to spread those over a 10-year period, people are still struggling to make those repayments back. So I can fully understand that there is a lot of green shoots and a lot of people, a lot of businesses I know that are doing incredibly well as a result of it. But there are still a lot of people out there that are struggling as a result.
What would you like the government to do to tackle this? Are injections of government money needed, or do you create moral hazard if you save these businesses?
Do you know, that is an incredibly good question. I've just recently been asked to and accepted the appointment of the Yorkshire Chair Region for R3, which is our governing body that essentially lobbies with governments as well. And this is one of the sort of the key questions that I was thinking about. In a lot of instances, we've got huge swathes of small limited companies that have got this debt. They've got no way of digging themselves out of the situation. I think what they probably need to do, rather than pouring additional monies into it, is perhaps look at the issues that we've got, which is the debt that's hanging around. You would imagine it wouldn't take too much for, say, for instance, a professional industry to produce a report based on a lot of these smaller firms. And if there's no way for them to actually recover these monies back, perhaps the government do need to step in and take on that debt.
Okay. Now, one last question, and I'm going to put this to all of our guests today. There is a clutch of interesting data which is forward-looking rather than backward-looking. Inflation has come down and likely to come down again. The Bank of England has an interest rate decision to make Thursday. If you're watching this after Thursday, you will know what the decision is. It's more likely than not to hold rates, but it's probably going to signal they're coming down. The recession will have officially ended based on official data out to be announced. Manufacturing, take our car industry, 80,000 cars were produced in February, 14% growth. The PMI index for businesses showed that businesses are growing. The Purchasing Manager Index showed businesses were growing. The economy is growing, 53.1% for services, 50.3% for manufacturing. Manufacturing itself is up by 1.2%, and there is real wages growth now. Wages are growing by more than inflation. Now, do all of those things really give people in business reason to think that the fertilizer is on the ground, the sun is about to shine, and there is the chance that green shoots will become strong plants?
Absolutely. I think those are all positive things. I think after any recession, you always have this upturn of business. I think where we've got to be very careful is that if you look at this will be my third, fourth recession that I've actually worked through. And there is that small period of time following on from a recession where you do have a tendency for businesses to sometimes overtrade.
Yeah.
And what you've got to look at is cash.
Yeah.
You know, do all of these businesses have the amount of cash available? I think interest rates are still through the roof. People want to try and borrow. A lot of them are having to turn to some of the middle tier lenders that are eye-watering levels of interest rates that they're doing. But they need that money to be able to get that work done, to enable to make the profit, to make the payments on the debt that they've accrued. So I completely agree with you on that it's all the signs are there to show good things are ahead. Where I think we've just got to be very careful is what we do in the next 3 to 6 months is going to be key and critical to this economy.
Right, I'm going to bring John in. Now, John is celebrating 30 years in business. I've been doing 37 years in business, so I've seen nearly as many, or probably more recessions than Dave, actually. And I remember those old cliches that are cliches because they're true. Turnover is vanity, profit is sanity, and the last bit, cash is king. They always forget the last line. That's the line of that cliche, isn't it? What's your view on the economy, John? You're a lawyer based in Pudsey with a small, good quality family and high street practice. What do you see in the economy?
I think a lot depends on who your client base is based. I mean, although we're based in Pudsey, we do a lot of work nationwide, so we're not just a high street practice. We do quite a lot of corporate work and businesses. I think it's important to, if a business is struggling, that they do seek some proper advice, whether it's legal or financial, as soon as they can, because there are options available. And for what David has just said, it appears as though that one of the biggest struggles at the moment for the clients he's meeting is potentially trying to handle the debt that they've got themselves into through COVID. Sometimes it's better to call it quits. Sometimes it's better to approach the business in a different way. But proper advice is obviously the key.
Dave, can I just ask you, do you get a lot of self-referrals? Or is it people... John, would you refer someone to someone like Dave to help them out?
Normally we get approached to give the advice in the same way that someone would go to David. Sometimes, if they're beyond the point of no return, at that stage we would then pass them on to a insolvency practitioner. And it might be the fact that this is why you're getting two different versions this morning.
Because, Dave, you don't want to necessarily see them when it's terminal. You also want to see them when you can help, don't you?
Correct. Yeah. I mean, I mentioned earlier that we've got a specialist department, BTG Advisory. What they're actually doing at the moment is promoting a product which we call a kick the tires situation, where we're actively going out to see accountants, solicitors throughout the country to say to them, look, you'll have a small element of your clients that you know are wobbling a little bit. Perhaps now is the time to parachute somebody in to have a good review of that business to see if there's something that can be done before it has to come to the likes of me. Without shadow of a doubt, I enjoy having advice meetings where the conclusion of it is you do not need my services. You need to look at A, B, and C, keep an eye on that, but you do not need to go down a formal insolvency procedure.
Okay, let's bring Aman in. And now, Aman, you've got a relatively new business. It's doing well. First of all, before we get into what you think about what Dave's saying about the economy, let's tell people what the business is. And we've got some products on the table so viewers rather than listeners can hear this. So describe them for our viewers and listeners. Let's hold them up.
Yeah, so what we do, Graham, we design and supply tapered insulation systems for flat roofing. And there's a couple of our products here. This is PIR insulation, which sits on a flat roof, gets waterproofed on top and insulates the building.
And is this what it looks like when it's finished?
No, this is one with a couple of products that we've mixed together. So this is a VIP system plus a traditional insulation system that sits underneath.
Because, we're broadcasting this and recording this in a modern building built in 2004, and it has a flat roof. But the flat roof isn't insulated. And I've realised that throughout the heating bills we get, the heat rises.
Exactly, and over 20% of heat loss is through a flat roof, so it's... in retrofit, it's the first thing that should be looked at. Right.
Now, these products, you run a business in northeast England, and these products you're putting out all over the UK, aren't you?
Correct. Majority of our business is in the southeast of England, Graham, between Birmingham and London. And over the past 12 months as well, we've started to export into Europe.
And your business has been going how many years? What's its growth been?
9 years old, 10th anniversary this October, so we'll have a bit of a party when that comes around. Growth journey's been great, Graham. First year was tough, but since then we've grown 20-30% every year, and last year we delivered over £11 million worth of projects.
And where is the kit made?
It's all UK manufactured, so our PIR partner manufactures in Chesterfield, and our stone wool gets manufactured in Wales.
Right. So this is a great innovation. It's using a genuinely seen need. There's thousands and thousands of flat roofs. It's an innovative product, and it's made in Britain, and you're supplying it into the markets, and you're growing. So let's put all of that into the context of the economy and what Dave is seeing. Is this at all on your radar?
Insolvency is a bit of an issue within construction. There has been effects from COVID, and I think a lot of companies, Graham, they just don't get help early enough from the likes of Dave and his business. People have the ostrich effect. They put their head in the sand and hope the problem goes away. You've got to deal with it up front. But for us as a company, what we found is a lot of companies in construction, they struggle more coming out of a recession and going in. Cash is key. People hold on to the money a lot more. So a bit of planning, and I think a bit of reality.
And I suppose you're supplying products to the construction sector in your case, so you have to be very careful on who you supply them to, but more on the terms you supply.
Correct. People like to hold on to the money, Graham, which is always an issue. But yeah, we work with B2B, so we work with bona fide customers, and it's a long-term relationship with a lot of repeat business.
Excellent. Let's go back to John. What changes have you seen in the way in which you work as a high street lawyer? You've got 30 years coming up. You've just heard a man's got 10 years coming up. So what kind of observations would you make about the kind of business you're running compared to the 1990s?
I think that in every walk of life, what has tends to increase is the amount of bureaucracy that we have to comply with. Everything is trying to be standardised, certainly the courts, land registry, etc. And our practice is slightly different because we're a general practice, because we recognise at the outset that not everything fits within a straightforward box. There's various scenarios which apply, which don't fulfil that box type approach. But certainly that seems to be the approach taken by most organisations nowadays.
So the general, I mean, my own PR firm has had to be general. We've got certain specialists that do, for instance, constructions or property or what have you. But I don't think in the north of England it's easy to set up a business that's niche, although here we have a man proving that point wrong. Yeah. But in a service business like law or PR or accountancy, you can't always be niche. Have you managed, do you worry that you're too general and you need to be more niche?
By being too general, if you look at the achievements that we've made over the years, we've been able to think outside the box and achieve quite a lot of high-profile cases. For example, I think you know, Graham, already, that I do hold the record for doing the quickest ever divorce in 5 days.
Yes.
I've also been the leading lawyer recommended by the Law Society in London for conveyancing in Bulgaria, which is fairly unusual. In the past, when I've done care work, I've had 2 cases reported because they made new law. And all of those achievements are by potentially adopting things outside the box and approaching things from a practical viewpoint. And I think the practicality consideration appears to be something that's missing nowadays.
You operate out of a very historic building in Pudsey, the original Leeds Co-op Industrial Society headquarters. I've been in it. It looks at a sort of Victorian-style building, and you have to walk up. There's no lift. No. Not that I can see anyway.
There's an interview room, no, Graham, so if you are tired, we can see you downstairs.
And your own great-grandfather was from Pudsey as well. He was one of the chief of police. So do you feel part of your community? Is it an important part of your business ethos?
I think we are, not just myself, but my family also works here now, are well known within the town. But as I said, it's not necessarily a local practice because we are nationwide and abroad, as evidenced by the Bulgarian conveyancing aspect.
And you have actually worked a lot in that part of the world, not just Bulgaria, but Turkey, the sort of Balkans and the sort of the point that Europe meets Asia is where you've got a lot of specialty in the different types of law being practiced.
Not really, no. It's just Bulgaria. However, in the past, we have had, for example, 2 Italian lawyers on secondment working with us as part of their training. I've done work in France. And they've even had the case which appeared in the front page of the New York Times as well. So,
I noticed you did help the assistants of Leeds United navigating the Turkish legal system following the death of 2 years.
Yeah. But that was just a one-off case, though.
Right.
That was in relation to that particular criminal litigation which was taking place.
But it sounds like your point here is that even though you're in law, you do need to be a little bit opportunistic, and you do need as an entrepreneurial approach in order to have 30 years in business like this.
Well, I think that applies to every business, Graham. And certainly what I do find, and this I think was one of our strengths, even when, approaching clients who may have some difficulties, is to just not consider the small box, but consider the wider picture and see if you can then apply some common sense to provide some assistance to them.
Dave, can I just round up today's programme by going back to you? You've made a very compelling case about overtrading and people needing to take care and the current trends in terms of what you're receiving from this very small business sector. Is what you've heard from our other guests giving a cause of comfort that all is not lost and people can either prosper in today's economy or come out of it with your advice?
Absolutely. I think the key thing that both guys touched on there was get advice early as possible. Get advice early as possible, whether it's from an accountant, a solicitor, or even a fellow business person. Go and speak to somebody, because you're not alone, and everybody has been there. And it's seek advice as quickly as possible. They will give you more opportunities than if not.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you, John. Thank you, man. And great to speak to everyone today. Now, if you'd like to be a guest on Northern Business Podcast, feel free to get in touch. We want to hear from you. Use LinkedIn. That's the easiest way. Do also contact my producer. It's Harry Sinclair. Thank you, Harry, for today's episode. And our technical operator, Robin Campbell. Thank you, Robin. Join us next time on Northern Business Podcast. Don't miss an episode. Like, rate, or subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts.